Hey, welcome again to SaaS Builders. I'm your host, Jefferson Nunn. Today we have this amazing individual, Shaun Gold. So, Shaun, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you for having me. I tend to call myself the true definition of a polymath. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and for those in the know, that just means it's a fancy way of saying a serial failure. But that's okay. It still sounds pretty cool. I've written 4 books, 2 bestsellers. I'm a screenwriter, startup advisor, startup fundraiser, strategic connector, former nightlife ninja. I've done a lot of cool stuff.
You are on Jeopardy.
Yes, oh, of course. And the last Jeopardy contestant to ever high five Alex Trebek on air. That's my contribution to game show history. So yeah, lots of cool stuff. I just try to go after what I think is interesting, and go after what I think is going to be something that I'm not going to get bored with, and I'm going to consider a waste of time, or that is going to be kind of redundant looking back upon. And that's kind of how I've always operated, especially in the entrepreneurship space, especially in the technology space.
So that's awesome. So what are you not bored with lately?
What am I not bored with? Well, as you know, I write my Substack, Utopian Journey. We're going to put a link right here, free. Subscribe to it. Goes out every Sunday, so that's one of my passion projects. A lot of founders and investors read it, based on the first graphic novel that I created for mental health, anti-fragility, resilience, and it's a bit motivating and inspiring from what I heard. I've been speaking a lot. I've been, appearing on podcasts. None of them as cool as this one, but I've been appearing on them. And, I'm just involved with a lot of different startups in different fields and verticals, just because I have a lot of connections and I have experience, and, we try to make things happen. That's essentially what it is making things happen. That if that could be one job title, it's, the person trying to get it together. Yeah, get it together. I think that sounds more realistic. Still haven't got there yet.
It sounds like you've done a lot of that. So, but just thinking back to perhaps the early days, getting things together, what was your first startup like? When you first said, I'm going to build a SaaS or I'm going to build a product, what happened?
So the first, like, when we say startup, do we mean like an actual startup, or do we mean a business? Because if we talk about business, my first one when I was like 12, that was my first that was an e-commerce company, and I ran it for 6 years. And I was one of the early adopters of PayPal. I don't want to date myself, but that's kind of like my favorite story about it. Because when I signed up for PayPal, my parents are like, "Oh, don't put your money in there. Who knows? What is this? Send a check." And I'm like, "Trust me, it's PayPal. It's gonna be great." Nobody knew what it was, and I was about 14 at the time that happened. So that was like my first real foray into entrepreneurship, where I had global clients. I had a website. I was doing all of that. And then I transferred it to an educational assistance business. And then after the educational assistance business, got into nightlife. And that's kind of what I'm known for. Despite everything I've done, it always goes back to the nightlife in South Beach, Miami, just because I spent 15 years doing it and working with all these big brands and celebrities and nightclubs and all the, like, just anything you could think of when it comes to Miami: penthouses, mansions, yachts, nightclubs, day clubs, festivals, product releases, product activations, brand activations, all of that. Did it all. That's what I did when I was 17 till I was like 33. And it was through that, because that was, essentially these businesses that I started, including that one, were not the traditional route of let's start a product, raise money, find people, and let's do it. It's just like, it's just me and a phone. What can I do? And I feel like, especially today, especially for SaaS companies, especially for anything, people forget that you kind of just need you and a phone, and now you have more resources than ever. But everyone has, kind of has been, I don't want to say brainwashed. I'm going to say brainwashed, where I have to find 10 co-founders, and I have to, build the product, and I have to raise $10 million, and then I have to have 50,000 paying customers, and I have to have all that stuff. And you don't need that. What you need is an idea that you believe in, that you can do. And if you can do all of it, the better. And if you have to bring in some people, which you probably will, you bring in the people and you do it. But this notion of, I can't do the business unless I get into this specific accelerator or this specific incubator. And if I don't get into Y Combinator, it's over. Like, you don't need that. There have been so many successful entrepreneurs and so many successful companies that never did any of that. It comes down to the will of the individual and if you want to do it. you know, and it was everything I've done has always been, I want to do this. I know it's impossible. I know it's difficult. I know there's going to be obstacles. I know no one cares and no one believes in me. That doesn't stop me from going after what I want to do and just putting my energy into doing it. And I think a lot of startup founders and a lot of entrepreneurs need to have that tenacity in mind and need to have that grit and need to just have that mindset to be like, listen, I'm doing this. You know, either you can get on the ship or just stay in port. I'm going with it. So, you know, and then through doing the nightlife, I made, you know, my entire network of connections, which, you know, led me to write my books and get into screenwriting and start guest lecturing and, you know, start advising startups, most of which, you know, a variety of them were SaaS. And I'm up to almost a dozen for different companies I've worked with in different verticals, whether it was a dating app, whether it was an Uber type competitor, whether it was a ticketing event app, Instagram loyalty, EHR platform, just so many different things that I've been involved with just because I knew someone that's like, hey, meet this person. I think you could help. And if I didn't know it, I would just learn it. And again, it's the tenacity. So you have to have this, you know, this tenacity to even be a founder and even be a true founder and run a true company, regardless if it's a startup, regardless of a small business. I really think, you know, at this stage of the game, people just need to have something they enjoy doing that they're passionate about and that they're going to, you know, survive through all the hurdles and arrows that are going to be placed in their path and go forward and profit from it. And it doesn't have to be something that's ranked here or featured here. It just needs to be something that you can wake up in the morning every day and just do and profit and make a living from and expand it to other verticals and not really worry so much about the clout and, you know, all everyone kind of applauding you. Oh, did you see this? He's the founder of this. He did this. Like it's all in my mind kind of got overgrown and saturated. I mean, we've given the term founder some religiosity it doesn't deserve. You know, it's just like,
I
oh,
agree.
he's the founder of
Yeah.
this. And it's like, okay, so what? There's 600 million entrepreneurs in the world. So we get like, do they all have religiosity regarded to them? Let's prostrate ourselves before the founder of this company that, you know, has only been around for 7 months, hasn't scaled up, doesn't have a product, doesn't have funding, doesn't even have anything but a WordPress website with a free template, you know, but everybody thinks that, you know, because of, oh, he's an entrepreneur, it's like, or he's the head of a startup, that it's like, oh, this person must be a genius. That's not the case. Most of them are kind of stone cold idiots.
True.
Yeah, so that's kind of my unique thought on it.
Well, you mentioned that you're already working with quite a few startups now, and even in the past. I'm sure you've seen some patterns between all of them. What's like the number one mistake that startup founders make? What's like mistake number one that they all seem to make?
I think the number one mistake is that they think that if they're going to raise money, that the money is just going to be so instantaneous and come to them just because, you know, hey, look at us, look at the product, this is what we're doing. Why does anyone want to give us money? You know, and I'm seeing that a lot. And a lot of these people, either they had careers where they didn't have to deal with rejection or they were very successful and they're entering a world of, you know, thousands upon thousands of other people trying to do the exact same thing at the exact same moment. And they realize that, hey, how come no one wants to give us money? It's so frustrating. This is such a waste of time. And it's like, listen, this is the game. Going in front of a board or a commission or an angel or whatever and trying to raise money and having them either say we're not interested, it's when you're not there yet, it's too early stage, I don't see a path to profitability, I just don't like you, I don't like the industry. Like, they're not used to that. And you have to be used to that. You have to go through hundreds of meetings to get like your one or two or three that are going to work, and they just don't realize it. And these aren't like young kids, you know, it's not like a Gen Z thing where there's no resilience or anything like that. These are people that are like 40 to 60 years old, and you know, they don't have it. And it's like, you have to have it. You have to be able to know unequivocally that you met with 100 different investors, and now I found out they're all not interested, and now I'm going to meet with another 100. You know, Winston Churchill said it best, is that success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm, you know, and that's kind of what startups are. And you know, it's not an easy gig. I mean, if it was easy, everybody would be scaling up and going to a Series A, Series B, and all that. Most people, they can't get a meeting, and if they do get a meeting, they don't get funded. And out of, you know, all the meetings they have, they're going to have one or two people that say, I dig this, I'm going to do this. And even one of those one or two people are going to be like, I'm in, but I'm not going to be the first. And that's a whole new problem, because then it's like, well, who's going to be the first? You know, it's like the chicken and the egg. And it's like, come on, the chicken and the egg are happening simultaneously. That's how you have to think. So I'd say that's the first major mistake. Second, it has to do with just the growth of the product itself. Is that people think, especially founders, that, one, they have to believe that the product is the best ever, which is true. But at the second time, they have to also realize that the majority of people are not going to realize it's the best ever. And it is their job to convince them it is the best ever. And scaling up to a certain amount of users to get the metrics is difficult. People think, that they just create a product, they put it out into the ether, people find it, everyone downloads it, and it goes viral. The end. There's always a story like that. And I feel like also the past 10, 15 years, pretty much since the growth of social media and the growth of, success coaches and fake gurus and whatever they want to call themselves, and all these books and podcasts that, kind of promise a way of working and launching a company. And that's not how it is. I'm sure you've heard of it. The $100 startup. Okay. Anyone that knows, if you're going to have a startup, you can't get incorporated for that amount of money. You can't file the paperwork for your Delaware company or even your regular any company for $100. The $100 startup, but again, the book was a bestseller. Everyone's like, oh man, I can do it. It's $100. Who needs the money? Or the 4-hour work week, because I know so many founders that they're so free, they have nothing to do. And the reality is that they work like nonstop, 7 days a week. So there's always kind of the same stories where it's kind of like, it's this book or it's this podcast or, or Crush It or all that. But the reality of the situation is it's not like that. If it was, every single entrepreneur and startup founder would be, a billionaire or worth $100 million. And the majority of them, I mean, the stats don't lie. It's like 99% of startups fail within the first year. That's just the way it goes. So you really, startups and founders need to realize that about startups, that it's like anything else in this world. Unless you're part of the 1% that's actually doing it, it kind of sucks. That's what it is. And if you don't have that mentality, you're going to be in for a rude awakening. And a lot of people that want to become entrepreneurs and want to become, even investors and want to, get into it, they just don't understand the game. The acumen of them is someone that tunes in the Shark Tank 30 minutes late and then changes the channel before the next commercial break and is like, I got it. I'm going to do this. And it's not like that. And, they're just in for like the rude awakening to reality. And that's what I see a lot. And a lot of them, they put a deck together, which is terrible. and they say, okay, let's go raise money. And they just have nothing to show for it. And they have no connections to really do it. They just, they're existing and they don't know what's happening. So, what do they do? And that's what happens. They get lost. And I feel like a lot of people pursue entrepreneurship and pursue startups because they don't like working where they're working. And, that's fine. I mean, I never had a real job because I never liked working in any of those places. I never envisioned myself at that. But at the same time, if you can't obey others, if you can't deal with the boss or the manager or whatever, then you have to obey yourself. And that's much more difficult because at the end of the day, it's you that has to wake yourself up at a certain time. And it's you that has to keep you working. And usually startups, they don't end at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock or some magic time. They keep going and there's no breaks. And you have to do it because it's all on you and there's no one to blame but yourself. And people don't like that responsibility. It's in their hands. It's a scary thing because, when something goes wrong, the first question someone asks is, who's responsible for this? So, it's
going to be yourself.
And you have to look in the mirror and, you have to kind of face this foe, which is yourself. And I mean, it's a tough grind. And I tell everyone, I say, listen, if you really want to do it, go after it. But be prepared because you're opening a Pandora's box and nothing is going to prepare you. I don't care how many podcasts you listen to, who you follow, how many books you read. Nothing is going to prepare you except the experience of being on the street and trying to make it happen. And, having to deal with just everything that a startup deals with, regardless of the vertical, because, I've worked with so many and I've been parts of startups that have failed and lost money or have had to pivot and the money's been in like limbo because they're pivoting. And it's kind of like, it's not a fun place to be in, especially if you have raised money and especially if that money comes from your friends and family and your college sisters, brothers, best friends, roommate you met once 10 years at a party. You have to tell these people if they're getting their money back or if they're not getting their money back or what's happening. And, it's tough. So it's, again, I advise everyone to do it, but I advise everyone to realize they're going on a difficult path and that path needs to be walked and it could only be walked by them. It is up to them to do it. You can't have someone else do it for you. You have to kind of blaze your own startup trail. And one lesson I tell everybody is that failure is extremely common. It's extremely common in startups, and it should not be shamed. And it usually is by the founders themselves and by others. And it's really stupid because I mean we live in a society where like you go on TikTok or Instagram and people are doing the most shameful things ever. They are lighting their house on fire while juggling 3 basketballs and doing the challenge of making sure the fire doesn't burn the entire house down and make sure they don't drop the ball and they're juggling or something so stupid and shameful. But everyone's like, oh, it's great. It has millions of followers, millions of views. But if you start your own company and go your own path and it doesn't work out, you feel such shame for it. And it's really not. I feel like everything else should be shame. And being a failure, it's something that you truly want to do or experiment with, should be celebrated. I mean, there's a concept of being, you lost, he's a loser or whatever. At least he played the game. I mean, it takes courage to go out there and do something. It takes guts. And the multitude of people do not have that. They just don't. They don't have that courage. They don't have the guts. It's easier for them to be, on the sidelines and just, sneering or jeering or whatever, or cheering when it works out, but not actually in the arena. So that's a bit of a long-winded answer to your question, but I wanted to touch on
I
a lot
love
of
it.
points.
I just wanted to bring up one fact that I'm aware of. I enjoyed science classes when I was in school. I mean, everybody else fell asleep in that class, and I was wide awake and loving every minute of it. One thing that I learned from science is that when you have an experiment, you're looking for the result, and it actually doesn't matter what the result is. Either a success or a failure is the result. Your job as a scientist is to record the results and to understand and then interpret that result and then present the next experiment, building on the first. So, in other words, a failure is a good thing because then you can learn from it, as opposed to, oh my God, I failed. I'm never doing this again. It's the worst thing to do.
It's, there's a quote by Thomas Edison that said, I haven't failed. I found 10,000 methods that didn't work. That's it, when he was trying to get the light bulb to work. And, I think it was Emerson or Thoreau. Life is an experiment, and the more experiments you make, the better. And, that's what it is. I mean, it's like everything is an experiment, and you just keep trying and whatever. And again, you don't have to. We live in a society where everyone thinks they have to share everything. They have to write this long harangue on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram about what they're going to do and all this because they have to let everyone know. And, and then if they fail, they have to tell everybody. And it's like, you don't have to do any of that. You're not beholden to anybody. Nobody cares. Nobody people like are in the news feed that people follow and all this stuff. Like nobody cares about you. Like you might think in your head that like, oh, 4,000 followers, I got to let them know. Trust me, they're not caring. And all they're doing is evaluating you. And if you're basing, what you want to do on a bunch of strangers or a bunch of associates and they don't like it, you're kind of like throwing away probably one of the best ideas you might have ever had because you're showing it to people that don't understand it, don't care. And, they're really not thinking about you. You'll stop caring about what people think of you when you realize they seldom do. That's a quote from David Foster Wallace. And it's very true just because, nobody cares. Like I'm not, it's this cult of like personality, like, oh, I'm sure Elon Musk is there wondering how many millions of people are thinking about his tweet right now. I know there's some diehard people that are, but it's like they're just going after what they want. And it's kind of like that's what it is. And I feel like you need to, if you're going to worry about what your followers think, try and get some customers and worry about what your customers think. Try and be beholden to the people that are going to be paying you a monthly fee to use whatever product you're giving them instead of, some girl you met 10 years ago at a fraternity party, like it doesn't matter.
Right.
So it's essentially, I mean, you don't need anyone's permission. You don't need anyone's approval. You just need to go after what you want. And, and you don't need to share it. It doesn't need to be shared. Some of the most successful people that I have ever met don't share anything. Okay. They have an Instagram that's private with 30 followers. They're not on Twitter. They don't go on Facebook. They're too focused running a company or enjoying life or building something to worry about what some stranger in Minnesota thinks about the product that's not going to even buy it. Doesn't matter. So you don't have to share it. Like, yeah, it's cool to like, hey, TechCrunch featured us or, it's cool to have an article or whatever. Like, yeah, it's all good, but you don't have to like, share your business plan. Like, what do you guys think of this? Here's my deck. I want feedback, and it's like, okay, you're kind of opening the Pandora's box for no reason. Just, if you have an idea, talk to a few key people, get their feedback. You don't have to share it with the world. You don't have to just put it out there and just go and do it. And there's a quote by Heigl that I love that says, the first stage of anything great is to be independent of public opinion. And that's true, because, what does the public know? They don't know anything. If Henry Ford said, if I had listened to what my customers wanted, I would have built a faster horse. It's kind of like, we wouldn't have any innovations because, oh, hey, it's going to be great. It's called a computer. You're going to have one in your house. It's going to do everything for you. And it's like, no, thanks. I don't want a computer in my house. How much does it cost? It's going to be great. You're going to be able to fly across the world. And you want me up in the air? No, I'm going on a ship. There's lifeboats. I'm not going up there. Again, it's, history, especially business history, is made by the optimists, not by the people that say it's never going to work, or this is a dumb idea, or this is like, you're crazy. It's not made by those people. It's made by the people that have a vision.
Had intended man to fly, you would have given him wings.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
That's one of my favorite Luddite quotes.
Yeah.
And I agree. I've always thought that innovation, actually, because you're on that cutting edge, you're just going to have all that heat from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're just right there at the edge and you're going to be hitting everything, but that's the best spot to be at, I've always thought.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, again,
with innovation comes, that responsibility and so forth. So how do you manage being on that cutting edge and deciding, okay, this is what we got to do next? How do you keep track of it all?
I mean, well, one, if you're going to be on the cutting edge, you have to realize that you're existing on a knife's edge and go either way, and the fact of just keeping track, it's not hard because you know what you want to do, and we don't need an app to keep track of all the contacts, and we don't need, I say this because someone's like, are you going to use Trello? Sign into Trello so you can keep track. I was like, I don't need to sign into Trello and have another, password, another email. Like, I keep track of it. It's very simple. Like, I know who to talk to. I know what the plan is. I know what we're doing. And it's not like we have a 55-step prison break plan, or it's like, okay, step 1, get the key. Step 2, distract the guard. Step 3, like, it's none of that. It's like 5 steps, 6 steps, 7 steps, 8 steps. I think we can keep it in mind in our head, or maybe on one sheet of a Google Doc at like half a page, So it's essentially, it comes down to the individual not getting distracted. You can keep it kind of focused on a whiteboard, on a Google Doc, whatever, but you get distracted if you're trying to go to every single social media and talk about it, or talk to a million people that don't really matter and waste your time, because, people these days, there's the illusion of busyness, and it should be about business. But the busyness is always cool. Oh, I'd love to talk to you. Here's my calendar, and you check the calendar and they're only available for 15 minutes 3 months from now on a random Thursday. And it's like, that doesn't prove anything to me. It just shows that, like, okay, you're not serious, because if you're serious, you would just pick up the phone right now and talk to me for 10 minutes. Again, there's a quote by Thoreau that says, the ants are busy. What are you busy doing? That's what it is about, and everyone likes to talk about, being how busy they are. There's a whole subculture of, being busy, and I wake up at 3 a.m. and I go to the gym for 2 hours and I do yoga. Then I eat 4 chickens for breakfast. And then I have, I'm already done a whole day before anyone woke up. Look how busy I am. Doesn't matter. What are you doing? What are you actually accomplishing? And, if you remain focused and you have your key objectives, some grand objective with some key objectives to lead to that, it's very simple. It's like, we don't need a board for this. We know what to do. And, I feel like a lot of people have lost that because a lot of people can't stay focused. I mean, how can you stay focused when your phone is getting 50,000 notifications? Everything is pinging you. And it's kind of like, I have no notifications on except email, just because, one, that's business. So the email is on, but I don't have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Uber, like, nothing is notifying me. Nothing. Maybe if I'm out, the parking meter is going to notify me, but nothing is notifying me. And I feel like it's essentially, people just need to stay focused. They have to focus on what they have to do, and you don't need some grand vision board to show you what you have to do. What do we have to do? Get X amount of paying customers. How much money do we have left? X amount. How long is it going to take before we burn through the money? Okay, 6 months. That's what we have to do. Let's get going. Let's start right now. It's Saturday. Exactly. So it's really, it's not hard, especially if you're going to be innovative, because you have to, focus on doing something better than someone else is already doing. You're doing something that no one else is doing. And, you maintain that cutting edge, but that edge constantly has to be sharpened. It does, it gets blunt after a while, and it gets blunt for everybody, and again, it goes back to earlier, they're experiments. If you go to Steve Jobs, the Lisa was an experiment. Nobody remembers the Lisa. Okay, the Lisa was an experiment.
I worked on one. I
Oh,
actually
so
worked on one.
wow. So how was it? Do you think it just was ahead of its time?
I do actually, because before that I had a Commodore 64.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was night and day difference.
Yeah, it was just, but again, it wasn't accepted. So you have to have wins and losses. There's a balance sheet, and the balance sheet kind of doesn't matter. You just know, as we talked about earlier for the experiment, this didn't work. Let's do this. This didn't work. Let's do this. It's not an RBI score, not a baseball card. There's no entrepreneurship card that shows everything. I'm sure there is. I'm sure someone's trying to make that a thing, and
There's another SaaS business.
yeah, exactly. Your entrepreneurship card for $5.99 a month. We give you your own scorecard, and someone actually was trying to do it. Some website was trying to create a card and doing it, and I thought it was cool. And I went into it and I contacted everybody, and not a single person got back to me. And I was just like, all right, it's not going to work, because the website was based on a community, like a community card of like, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I can give you. And you just contact people. Not a single person got back to me. So I said, okay, the card is cool, but it's kind of like, what's it for? So yeah, it's essentially, you have to kind of stay. I mean, it goes back to just being focused. This is a world of distraction, and you can die by distraction. You can literally have your business become a corpse because you have to binge season 2 of Umbrella Academy for the 5th time to see the Easter eggs, when you should be working, or you should be networking, or you should be taking a call, or you should be reading a book that's actually going to help you, or listening to something that's going to improve you. It's a full-time gig to be innovative, to be a founder, and to be a serious one, to be one that wants to see differences and make things happen.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate having you on the show. This has been a fantastic interview. I just wanted to have one more, just last thought. If someone were just 18 years old, coming out of college, and they said, I'm thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, what's the first thing that they should do?
Well, they're 18 and coming out of college. They're super smart.
Right, exactly.
They can get a job with NASA if they're coming out of college at 18. Don't worry about being an entrepreneur. But no, so I mean, are you saying like coming out of college or coming out of high school?
Coming out of high school, or maybe 22, coming out of 2 years of college.
I mean, the one thing I would recommend is, at that age especially, and it's hard because it goes back to what I talk about, is to just try your hand at a lot of different things, and don't post it, don't take a video, don't do anything stupid like that, because you're gonna fail, and unless you want to be like known as the guy, because your friends are gonna say you're random. Trust me, I said I was random. They still say I'm random. I don't think I'm random. I just have a variety of interests, and I do a lot of different things, hence the polymath title. But people don't like to be thought of as random. Oh, Steve, he's too random. He turned down the job, he turned down the executive training program at Bloomingdale's. He's too random. It's kind of like you have to embrace the randomness, and you have to kind of dive into it to see what you like. And being an entrepreneur, is not an overnight success story. It's usually a culmination of years of setbacks and failures, and making the right connections, and learning what works and what doesn't work, and reading a variety of books, and really trying to grasp a hold on what it is that you're trying to do. So I think people should start an entrepreneurship as early as possible. And I think that, what you learn at, say, 21, and I can say this because I was already doing the nightlife. I was almost 4 years in when I was 21. I was already like almost at the top of the game. Is that no one's going to remember your failures but you. Okay. And they're as big or as small as you make them. No one's going to come back to you and heckle you or anything. And you can just keep going after what you want to do. And, take a variety of different jobs, take a variety of different, apprenticeships, learn from as many people as possible, and see what really fits. And you might not be that 23-year-old millionaire. I mean, it's extremely rare to be the 23-year-old millionaire. So don't try to be, but try to gain the knowledge and the expertise so that within 7 years, 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, whatever, you're going to have a wealth of experience, a wealth of connections, a wealth of knowledge that you can apply. And I feel like, it's better to stumble across something than sit home and do nothing. You're going to accomplish much more, just experimenting and just being out on the street than playing Fortnite for 10 hours or streaming on Twitch or binging some show that you don't even care for, but someone recommended it and you already started it, so you have to finish it, and 10 seasons, maybe it gets good. Like, you stop wasting the time like that. Like when you're that young, that age, that is the time to act. And if you can pull it off, doors are going to open, because people that are 10 years older than you, 12 years older, 20 years older, are going to look on at you in amazement, because so few people are doing it. Trust me, I was that kid. I was the kid that was already doing it. And I try to tell them, because I have a lot on my newsletter, and I have a lot of followers in the Gen Z bracket. I say, listen, don't care about your social. Just go after it. If you want to get into this field, go after it. Try and break into it. If you can't, go into another field and then come back to that field. Don't let anything or anyone stop you. And above all, don't buy a course that teaches you how to be successful.
Right. Exactly.
I think that's the last caveat I leave is, don't spend money you don't have on a course you don't need that's going to teach you nothing. You can learn so much now from just books, podcasts, blogs, newsletters.
It's all free there.
It's all free
now.
It's up to you. And again, I'm a bibliophile. I'm always reading a new book. And those books are investments. $20 a month, $30 a month, $40 a month. It's the best money you can ever spend, because you will learn, so much from just being alone with your thoughts and those books, and combine that with the real world experience of the street. Forget about it, because so many people don't read anymore. They just don't read. It's a society right now where a tweet is too long to stay focused. So to read a 400-page business book or an entrepreneurship book or a book on coding or a book on marketing, I mean, a lot of people don't have that in them anymore. They don't. They want to read a romance novel. They want to read, the next Game of Thrones or whatever. But you need to focus on what you want to do. And, knowledge is the best investment you can make. And the books with Amazon, whether you're an Amazon Kindle subscriber or whatever, you can get so much of that knowledge. But it's up to you to sit there, turn the distractions off, read it, and you're going to change. You're not going to see it overnight. It's not going to be like, oh, I read 2 books, nothing's happened. This guy's crazy. A month, 6 months, a year, 6 years. Knowledge compounds. Experience compounds. So you have to be ready to undertake that journey of reading, because it's a cost. Am I going to watch Netflix? Am I going to read this book? Am I going to go out, or am I going to read this book? Am I going to go out with my friends, or am I going to, meet with this guy for coffee that is in the field I want to get into? And he was kind enough to give me 15 minutes of his time to meet at Starbucks, even though my friend's saying it's really fun and this is a one-time thing and there's a festival or whatever. Right. That's what it comes down to. And, a decision for something is a decision against something else. There's an opportunity cost. And that's not with, when we say opportunity cost, we mean like an investment. Oh, because I invested here. No, it means a cost of your time and your action and your effort. So, I could easily just wake up and watch TV all day, but nothing. That would cost me money and that would cost me time. And if I spend that time instead reading or writing or taking calls or learning or doing something that's so productive, I'm going to be further ahead tomorrow. So it's all about moving forward, and it's all about forging your path. And, age is nothing to be afraid of. The 18-year-olds and the 21-year-old segment, they're the ones that can change the world if they really want to. They just have to have the fortitude, and they have to have the discipline to do so. And they have to go out there and do something crazy. That's what I tell everyone. Do something crazy, because you don't know where it's going to lead. You have no idea until you actually do it.
It's awesome stuff. I really appreciate you having you on the show. One thing that, at least in my life, that made a huge difference, you mentioned about reading, is my dad made it a requirement that I read at least an hour every day at minimum. But for every completed book, he would give me, at the time, he would give me 10 cents. I guess adjusted for inflation, that'd be like, $2. But that made all the difference in my life, with just reading books, because there's the whole world out there. And, when you're stuck in a random place in Louisiana, it's the best way to learn about the world, the actual world that's really out there, marketing, business. There's so many great books out there.
Yeah, I mean, you
So
have to be.
again,
I'll leave with a final quote because
yes,
we're talking about the books. Kafka said, "A book should be like an axe to the frozen mind."